go.
Back up here.
Downtown, man.
Welcome to my riding.
You know, aside from campaigning, which is probably, you know, a fun thing for people that have some sort of experience in politics,
Right.
You're campaigning downtown, so it doesn't really get much better, does it?
Honestly, and the thing is too, is like when you know the people downtown, and like you have to think about the millions of people that come into Montreal just on a daily basis, let alone the people that live in Ville-Marie.
Yeah.
Think about it, you know, 70% of the people that live in Ville-Marie, the Sud-Ouest, Ile-des-Soeurs, live and work in their riding.
Well, it makes sense.
70%.
Yeah.
So like, the really cool thing is, you know, being able to, first off, I have amazing volunteers that come from all over the greater Montreal area. But the fact that they come to school here or they come to work here makes them all the more willing to get involved in the campaign.
It must be difficult though, campaigning on the ground, because you don't know if the person you're running into is here for work, passing by, or if he actually lives here.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's why the door-to-door game is so important.
Yeah.
You know, we've done 4,000 doors since the past 2.5 months. And I'm happy with that thus far, and there's a lot more to do. I want to hit at least 10,000 by the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
But definitely, I mean, like, that's why the door-to-door is so important. And when you're doing door-to-door around here in downtown Montreal, especially near Concordia and near McGill, people are very transient. You don't know if they're going to be there. You know, you could knock on their door in April. They may not be there by October 21st.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's the really big problem right there, from being able to identify your voters and ensure that they stay in that apartment so you can actually get them out on election day. And I've had that problem where people are like, well, actually, I'm moving. And sort of a debate of like, okay, well, where should I be voting? Should I be staying here and voting for you? Or should I register in my new riding?
Well, it's a whole other set of logistics, just to keeping up with them. Okay,
crazy.
what's your name? Okay, we'll contact you. I'll have my guys call you. Where are you going to be? Yeah.
Exactly. It's a nightmare and a half. But you know what? If you have a good team around you and you have good volunteers, you're able to keep track of it.
Yeah.
So I've been lucky from that perspective there. But by and large, it's been a great experience.
Dude, I'm happy that you're here, man. Just a full disclosure to everyone listening or watching, you were supposed to be on the regular podcast. You were among the first people that I reached out to earlier this year, and then your nomination happened. So I was like, you know what? Let me not bother the guy. In any case, I was thinking of doing this format since back then. No, but I thought, you know, because I was thinking already to do this. So I'm like, you know what? We'll just do it further in time, and I'm happy, man. I'm happy that we're finally doing it. I'm happy for you, man, for making this move. Of course, you're no stranger to politics. I mean, you have quite the experience. Tell me, for you, how did this all start? This whole political thing, the interest in politics and getting involved and engaging.
First off, it's me, right over there.
Yeah.
You see my signs.
I was gonna send you a text message. I was like, good job, man. You beat the race on getting the intersection there on René Lévesque and University. Prime election real estate right there.
People are telling me, Michael, you've beat Mark Miller at the sign war. So I'm like, it's still pretty competitive at this point. But to answer your question, my first passion was journalism.
Okay.
And for me, I was 16 years old when I started an internship at CJAD. And for me, my real passion in journalism was radio, because I have the face for it and a voice for print.
Yeah.
So in any case, I really wanted to get involved in communications and journalism, and I got really lucky and I bumped into a great guy by the name of Dan Delmar, who took me under his wing, along with Tommy Schnermacher, who's now a former CJAD host.
Legend.
And a legend in his own right. And the both of them, along with a few other amazing people at CJAD, took me under their wing and mentored me. And for 2.5 years, I started as an intern working in the public affairs department, going into work as a producer part-time, and then eventually, I was working full-time hours as a full-fledged CJAD reporter. And this was all happening during the 2012 student crisis.
Wow, yeah.
Imagine, I was like 17 going on 18, wrapping up CEGEP. And, you have this ginormous social movement happening in your backyard. And first off, for a journalist, you're like, wow, this is like, you've hit gold.
For sure.
Because you can really leave your mark right then and there and say, listen. And the thing too is that the thing that also helped me was the fact that none of the senior reporters inside of the newsroom wanted to go onto the streets. I mean, not a lot of them, because there's tear gas being dispersed. There's flashbang grenades going off. People are getting reporters along with protesters along with disruptors are getting hit across the head with police batons.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a scary time out there. So I was able to take advantage of that, and make a bit of a name for myself as this young gutsy reporter going there and hitting the streets.
Yeah.
And it was, albeit that it was very sad to see a lot of the violence that occurred on all sides. I was really, I look back and I said to myself, had I not done that, I would not be here where I am today. And it's thanks to those people like Tommy, like Dan, that propelled me like that. So hitting, politics came a little bit after, because, CJD was bought by a major media consortium, and consequently, fired about a third of the staff. And I quickly said to myself, you know what? This is not how I'm going to be able to raise a family.
Yeah.
This is not how I'm going to be able to survive. As a young professional, starting off his education, his post-secondary education, what is my path? And it was really like a reflective time for me. Like, where do I go from here? So I said, hey, what's the next best thing? I said, where can I communicate effectively with people? Where can I be a decision maker?
Yeah.
And that was politics. And then so I made the switch over, and
You were working in Quebec City. You were working for the Speaker.
Yeah. But my first job ever in Quebec City was working for Jeffrey Kelly.
Okay.
So I was working for Jeff Kelly, who, member of the National Assembly for the West Island at the time, and was working at his ministerial office. I think Jeff told me I still have the record for being the youngest political advisor inside of a ministerial office.
You were what,
18?
18.
And I had half of the files in the office where I was working with English-speaking Indigenous populations across Quebec.
Yeah.
So the Cree, the Algonquin, the Inuit in their own rights. And it was, trial by fire. And I think I pulled it together pretty well. And then from there, after a little while, went to go work for Jacques Chagnon.
Speaker of the House, obviously, more or less neutral position, right? So you're behind the scenes in this, with these responsibilities where you can't really take a position, right? You don't want to tarnish the name of the Speaker of the House and so on. So you go from there to like full out candidate.
Yeah.
Here I am. Tell me about that transition. How does that happen?
I think I've always had conservative values, and fiscally conservative, because I'm very progressive in that sense. There, obviously, very proud of our LGBTQ stance. We're a very openly LGBTQ friendly party. A party that I'm pro-choice, and I'm very proud to be pro-choice. And I'm a progressive conservative in that sense. There, on fiscal issues, I think that fiscal conservatism is something that we need to bring back to Canada, because over the past 4 years, we have not had that. So I think at the end of the day, was it a difficult transition? You know what? It was difficult during those years that I was working for the Speaker, and that I was working in his shadow of neutrality. And those were the difficult times. Now I've sort of been like unleashed.
Yeah, you're almost free, right? There's this sense of like freedom. You can actually do and say what you want without having...
well, you still have to be careful about what you say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, you're not doing it, like, for example, with a thought of, what are people going to say? What is your boss going to say? Can I do that? Is it gonna affect any decisions that we're working on, or that sort of thing? And I think so. It's like a weight off your shoulders, kind of.
For sure, and I think that's what it's like for any. Whatever you're doing, whatever job you're doing. I mean, even working as a reporter. I mean, like, the questions you ask. Hold weights. They have weight. They have clout. I mean, it's a privilege to be a reporter. A funny story is, like, when I was working for CJD, I had to go off-site to Burlington, Vermont. And it was the first time I was, again, 17, 18, going to Burlington it was the meeting of New England governors and Eastern Canadian premiers. And I was there to cover Jean Charest.
Yeah.
It was actually a week before the September 2012 election that Charest lost.
Yeah.
And Pauline Marois became Premier of Quebec under a PQ minority government. I was there. I didn't have a driver's license then. I still don't have one now. I've never driven a car in my life. I truly am that kind of guy who bixies around Montreal and only uses public transit. But when I got there, I couldn't get to one of the press briefings, one of the press conferences. And Hugo Damour, who was working for Jean Charest at the time,
press attaché, yeah.
Exactly, felt so bad for me and said, Michael, jump into the SQ car, the Sûreté du Québec car.
Way.
Come with me. We're gonna get you the press conference.
That's so funny.
You know, because he said, like, look at this poor guy from CJD. They doesn't have a driver's license. You know, they can't get can't hail a cab around here.
Yeah.
And I finally got a one-on-one exclusive with Peter Shumlin, the governor of Vermont at the time, and Jean Charest. And the reason why I bring this up is that when I was interviewing them and I was talking with them and I was saying, look at, seeing like the access that somebody like I had. I said to myself, you know what? These are the decision makers. These are the people that want to make their respective jurisdictions better for their kids, for their grandkids, and for that of all Quebecers, and at the time, Vermonters for Governor Shumlin. I said to myself, you know what? This is something that could interest me. Mm-hmm. Being able to make positive change like that, and so it made sense. Hey, it's me.
Again. You got to flip it this way, though.
I know. People keep on pushing them the other way. I think...
St. Catherine, it's like a flood of people here.
They're giving me either a high five or not so much.
Yeah, they don't know that they even touched you there.
Yeah.
Your nomination, though, it came really early on in the year.
It was late April.
Late April.
Yeah.
You had a lot of time, though, to prepare and start working on the ground while your opponent was, pretty much stuck in Ottawa working. Tell me about some of the messages that you got, or the people that you met. What, like the feeling that you get on the ground.
The most important barometer, I think, in terms of getting that feeling, is the door-to-door. Mm-hmm. And I think it's James Carville from CNN, when he was an advisor for Bill Clinton. Everybody knows this in politics, but for your listeners, he was asked, what is the most important issue? And he said, well, it's the economy, stupid. And that's what it comes down to. It's the economy, and it's affordability. People can't get by. It's not even a question of getting ahead. They can't get by.
Yeah.
When I'm hearing from people that they're struggling to pay their mortgage payments, they're struggling to pay their groceries, in areas in Montreal where you would not expect it, so you think affluent areas, people are hurting, and they know things have gotten more expensive for them. And they know that it's not just like that for them, but it's for their neighbors too. 2/3 of Canadians are struggling at this point, say recent studies. And I think that it's a consequence of, the past 4 years we've had Justin Trudeau raising, on 80% of people in the middle class are paying at least $800 more than what they were paying previously under Stephen Harper. And I think that's a consequence of, when you bring in social programs and you want to, develop this sort of, socialistic utopia, these are the consequences. People hurt financially. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've been hearing there. Other issues, obviously, very important, the environment. How are we able to combat, how are we able to fight climate change? And I think through, I'm somebody who believes, and our party believes, that it's going to be through green technology and not through taxes. Tech over taxes any day is the best way. And that's what we've really been pushing for in terms of being able to incentivize corporations and major emitters in terms of being able to put money into research and development, into carbon capture, and general green tech. And I think that is the best way to go forward in terms of fighting climate change right now. We've seen that over the past 3-4 years, the Liberals have not been able to make the Paris targets. Mm-hmm. In 2016, they were off by 44 megatons. In 2017, they were off by 66 megatons. Now in 2018, they're going to be off by 108 megatons.
Yeah, but neither was the previous Conservative government, mind you, right?
Not as bad as this. Yeah. Not as bad as what we've seen over the past 3 years. And Trudeau, for him saying that he was going to be a major force to be reckoned with when it came to climate change. He's obviously been pretty lackluster from this standpoint, and a lot of room. It's given us a lot of room to be able to present our plan, 55 points on how we can make the environment better, obviously reduce our emissions, but working in tandem with major emitters, not taxing, groceries, for example, that are being hit with the carbon tax. At the end of the day, the carbon tax is only hitting about 8% of major corporations that are big polluters. The rest, the 92%, it's coming onto that coffee there in your hand.
Yeah.
It's coming onto your grocery bill. It's coming onto your gas bill. It's coming into your heating bill. This is not acceptable for everyday Canadians to be having to foot the bill for this. So,
say you're elected on 21st of October. You're obviously downtown. There's a lot of things happening downtown. What are some of the things that you would love to change or to work on?
First and foremost, I mean, if you look at the constituency overall, because this is something that affects the entire riding, but also I would say primarily also Nuns Island is the demolition of the Champlain Bridge.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful bridge that was announced by Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and we're very proud of the fact that it was a Conservative government that led the effort for a new Champlain Bridge. Even though the Liberals tried taking credit for it over the past 4 years, what we need now is an action plan to take care and ensure that the demolition of the Champlain Bridge is done in a way that is respectful to the environment and is respectful also to the people that live around the bridge and access that area every day. That is a big concern in terms of congestion right now for those that are in and around Nuns Island and also in and around downtown Montreal.
Yeah.
So it's something that the plan has not been effectively communicated. That's something that's been very annoying.
There's no timeline either, right? I mean...
And this is the major thing too, is that even with an established timeline, the delays are the biggest worry. Just like we faced delays with the Champlain Bridge over when the Liberals came in. So I mean, it's those are the consequences that we're facing right now, and that's what I'm worried from that perspective there. But it's also a very just in terms of affordability and getting by and things getting more difficult over the past 4 years. It's a challenge, I think, for any MP that represents an urban riding that. You're dealing with wealth disparity, a big wealth gap between, the top of my riding, the northern part of my riding, and the Golden Square Mile being fairly affluent, fairly wealthy. The middle section here, a mix. Obviously, times are, I would say, were tougher for this sort of downtown core. Little Burgundy, Point St. Charles. These are areas where families are truly struggling, and then again to the south in Nuns Island, again. Retired, but also a mix of new families too.
Yeah.
New young families that are coming in over there. So it's a challenge for any elected official, I think, in this area to be able to, concretely put on paper a plan that would be able to serve the global sense of the riding. I think it's a question of dividing it into sectors, being able to target efficiently. You need to have a message for each of the quartiers of the neighborhoods itself.
So like you look downtown, obviously it doesn't take a genius to figure out that there's a lot of office space. A lot of people work here. It's your downtown core. There's been recent developments provincially in Quebec, and two bills specifically, Bill 9 and Bill 21, that are going to have, if they haven't had already, an impact not only on the people living in your riding, but in the businesses in this riding. We're talking about Bill 9, restrictions on immigration policies, which comes at a time where we already know that there's a labor shortage. Right. So obviously that has an impact,
especially in the regions.
In the regions, but but
downtown's facing it too, for sure.
Downtown as well. And you have a very diverse population that is seeing the effects of Bill 21, where we're restricting them to wear religious symbols in public workspaces. Of course, these are provincial jurisdictions. I think that this is a topic that everyone is kind of afraid to touch. Nobody really wants to take on that question because of the fact that you're in an election right now and you don't want to affect the Quebec population. Bill 21 is serious. It's being contested right now. How do you feel about that? I mean, I know that your leader came out and said, they're not going to challenge it if a conservative government were to get elected. How do you deal with something like that when you have people in this riding that are ultimately going to be affected by it?
I think that this is something in terms of social issues that has been on the front of minds of not just Quebecers, but all Canadians, because the rest of Canada has been watching the developments of Bill 21 here. And I can tell you that when I go door to door, when I speak with people, I'm getting mixed messages depending on who I'm speaking to. At the end of the day, I think it's a question of respect. And you said it yourself, it's a provincial matter in that sense there, it's provincial jurisdiction. And I think it's important to be able to respect the consequences of elections and democratic elections. The CAC was elected in October of 2018 with a mandate to go forward with this legislation. Quebecers voted for that. And I think it's important to respect the will of the voters. That being said, the other thing that my leader said, that Andrew Scheer said, was that we would in no way whatsoever ever bring similar legislation of this kind to the federal level. That will not be happening.
Yeah.
And Canadians can be assured that we will never put forward legislation of that nature. But at the same time, we need to respect the fact that this is something that Quebecers voted for, and you have to always respect the will of the voters. It may look at polls, public opinion polls. Everybody's infatuated by polls these days and poll aggregators. The only poll that matters is the poll on election day.
Yeah, exactly.
You know this as well as I do. So that's what it comes down to.
You guys came out of the gates, man, punching. You beat Justin Trudeau to the launch of the campaign, which I thought was masterful.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to set the pace for the campaign? Do you think we're going to be seeing attacks flying left, right, and center from either side?
It's sad, but I'm always a positive thinker. But I think that we need to be. You need to know when to punch, and you need to know when to fight, and you need to be calculated with that. The Liberals have certainly made it very easy for us. Just on the ethics file alone, you look at SNC, you look at the fact that Jody Wilson-Raybould was interviewed just 2 days ago by the RCMP. There is a preliminary investigation going on, so they are in the step. The RCMP is currently in the step before an investigation would be launched, and they are interviewing witnesses that believe that there was a major political maneuvering inside of the Prime Minister's office that violated the law. And we already know that the Prime Minister violated the ethics law twice. Mario Dion came out and made that very clear. But in recent events, in the recent past few weeks, it's been very public in the sense of the ethics commissioner coming out and saying that the Prime Minister broke the ethics law when it came to the SNC affair. The influence that was the undue influence and the pressure that was put on the Attorney General at the time, Jody Wilson-Raybould, was completely inappropriate and illegal.
See, this is the thing about the SNC leveling. Everyone's calling it a scandal. I just think it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situations, where had he not done anything and those, thousands of jobs were to be lost, he'd get slammed.
But they weren't going to be lost. And I'll tell you one thing, the chief executive officer of SNC came out and said those jobs were never at risk. Those 9,000 jobs here in Montreal were never, ever at risk of leaving. And that's when you have SNC saying that themselves, that makes you, that is exactly what needs to be public. And I mean, the fact that, when you have the chief executive officer of the company that is at the forefront of minds of all Canadians coming out and saying that jobs were never at risk in this case, you have to ask yourself, what was the Prime Minister thinking in this moment? And what he was thinking was about, he was putting himself, the fact that he's a Quebec MP, putting that first without looking at the rule of law. And I think that is a terrible way to govern. You need to always follow the equal, fair nature of natural law. And I think that is something that Justin Trudeau definitely needs a lesson on. Maybe his new Attorney General can tell him that.
So you guys are already, it's been a couple of days into the campaign. We're hearing a lot of things, a lot of attacks on his moral ability to lead Canada as a Prime Minister. And from their side, there's a lot of attacks coming in terms of Andrew Scheer's respect for, different human rights. And, we're talking about the questions on abortion, that whole thing that happened during, Pride Month where nobody saw him parading and, they started questioning him.
I was marching. I marched in Pride.
Yeah.
We had 60 amazing Conservative candidates and volunteers marching in Montreal Pride, and we had Toronto Pride also. So we were very happy to have that. But I think there's just on the social fronts like that, and the criticism we've received in that sense there. I think there's many ways that you can support the LGBTQ plus community here in Canada. One way is defending the rights of all members of that community globally. And that was something that, Andrew was proud to do alongside John Baird and alongside Stephen Harper during our conservative government of 10 years. When we were calling out African dictatorships for persecuting and killing gays for the simple fact that they were gay. And that is something that we as a government were proud to call out. And when no other member of the Commonwealth would, when no other member of the First World would, Canada was there and Canada denounced that. So I'm proud as a conservative for the fact that we took that, and we will continue that under Andrew's leadership when he becomes Prime Minister on October 21st.
Do you think if he were to get elected, do you think we're going to see him marching soon in a pride parade?
Listen, it's a personal decision. It was a personal decision for me to march in the parade in itself.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it's you got to leave it at that. But I mean, the fact is, Andrew's been very supportive of our caucus, of our candidates. We've got many LGBTQ candidates running across coast to coast to coast, and he's proud to have them alongside the team.
How do you reassure? Because there's a pretty important faction that are supporting the Conservative Party, but that are pro-life, in this whole debate on abortion, right? How do you convince them that, and Andrew Scheer came out and said under his government he will not revisit the question, but there's all these things surfacing now about, with candidates that are saying that that's their main mission, and it's a big question mark on whether or not any member of Parliament from the Conservative Party will table a private member's bill revisiting this question, whether or not Andrew Scheer will accept it or not. Right? What do you say to these people that are supporting the Conservative Party but that are pro-life?
I say to them that there are pro-life members of Parliament currently in the House of Commons in the Liberal Party. And that's something that is not disputed. There are currently 14 members of Justin Trudeau's caucus that are pro-life. Just like, in our caucus, we have members that are pro-life. So, I mean, it's something that happens on both sides. And the fact is that, you look at public opinion polling. I said, the only polls that matter are the ones on election day. But we're going to look at some public opinion polling right now.
No, but it's important because it gives you an image of what people think at a certain, given time.
They will say, generally speaking, anywhere between between a quarter to a third of Canadians are in one way or another pro-life, depending on certain definitions. Different polling firms have different ways of defining what is pro-life and what is pro-choice. That is, anybody will say that is a sizable amount of the population, between a quarter to a third of Canadians.
Yeah.
We need to respect the views of all Canadians. But at the same time, we made a decision that this debate is closed because the majority of Canadians have said this debate is closed. And we have put that aside. But at the end of the day, we cannot govern the individual personal decisions and personal beliefs and faiths of caucus members, just like Trudeau can't do the same thing to his caucus members.
Yeah.
They have their beliefs. The one thing that we can do is say, hey, we as a party have made a decision. We're in 2019. We've come to the conclusion that this is decided on. And as a pro-choice, hopefully a pro-choice MP, soon to be, I'm happy with that position right there because I know that it will, women's rights will be protected in that sense there.
Let's talk about the platform. Obviously, it hasn't been announced yet. It's going to be coming out during the campaign.
Little by little, yeah.
Yeah, of course, there's going to be different announcements. We're going to get the costings and the whole budgeting of the platform as well. You've obviously been briefed. I don't want you to give out the scoop or anything, but what can we expect the Conservatives to campaign on?
Well, I can tell you we're definitely when it comes to putting things out there in terms of spending, we're not going to start spending until we're able to pay for it. I mean, new spending requires us being able to afford that. Government should be able to spend and budget the same way that a family does. You don't go on the vacation if you need to replace your roof after a bad storm. I think at the end of the day, Canadians expect their government to be able to budget the same way they do and have the same respect for fiscal issues as they do at home when they're trying to make ends meet. I think at the end of the day, one of the things that we're not going to be doing is giving $12 million to major companies like Loblaws, for example, to go buy fridges, which came out the past few weeks. We're not going to be giving $250 million to the Asian Development Bank to support infrastructure projects outside of Canada, where we're not going to be, paying for Justin Trudeau's $215,000 trips to the Bahamas because he's not going to be prime minister anymore. So it's going to be fantastic, and Andrew is going to be using his own money to go on vacation. I think that,
but look,
these are the types of spending. Nonsense that has driven Canadians crazy over the past 4 years under Justin Trudeau.
How do you think? Okay, let's say you guys win on October 21st.
People graffitied our signs. Do you see this?
Yeah.
Everybody.
There's a big X before. No, there was
the other one I had an
but
X
it's a
on
blue
it.
X though.
But
so,
it's a blue because somebody was voting for me. You see, so they're early voters. Vote early, vote often. Don't vote twice because that's illegal.
The challenge that you're going to have should you get elected on 21st of October, look, I think in terms of the budget, the Liberals were way off course, right? I mean, collectively, about $70 billion in deficit, which is really off what they had campaigned on in 2015. But let's say you come into government now, you're going to have to assume the responsibility of limited government spending in order to make up for that. Yeah. So that automatically means cutting, right?
No, it does not automatically mean cutting it. It means us being able to ensure that the expenditures and the bloated government that Trudeau has put forward in the past 4 years does not continue in that sense there. The reason why he was unable to balance the budget, as he said, and believe you me, budgets do not balance themselves, is because year after year, Bill Morneau made more spending promises that were outside of the scope of the Liberal platform. So we did not see that coming. My point being is that people, whenever a conservative government comes in, or the potential for a conservative government to be formed is on the verge there, they start using words like austerity, spending cuts, where we're not going to, people are, it's the end of the world, essentially, and there's no way that we can elect the Conservatives. We have made the commitment that, be it for your old age security, be it for, your child tax benefits, your social services that you depend on, that are so essential to Canadians being able to ensure they can have what they need, the bare necessities, those will never be touched. We have made that commitment. We have budgeted that into our plan. We will not be cutting that whatsoever. And that's very important for us to put that forward and to be very clear with Canadians that we are not going to cut.
We're going to close it up. I know you're very busy. You have more campaigning to do.
We still have a few signs to put up still.
Exactly.
So.
You're running in a riding that traditionally is it's a pretty safe riding for the Liberals. How do you convince your electors that you're the right guy for them?
When they see a 25-year-old running for the first time, I have a decent amount of experience. They know that I've worked in a constituency office before. I've worked in a ministerial office. They know that I have the experience behind me. They know that I have the determination. When I'm going door to door and I'm speaking with constituents, I'll tell you a quick story in this sense. Was knocking in Nuns Island. I went to the door. Lovely elderly lady came to the door, and I started speaking to her, and she started getting so upset and so angry at me. And she started saying to me, saying in French, you don't return my calls, and I'm trying to get responses from you.
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? Yeah. And she started saying, Mr. Miller, like what's happening? And I said, no, Madame, je m'appelle Michael Forian, je suis pas Monsieur Miller.
That's funny.
No. So, as somebody who understands the link of being able to respond to your constituents, be able to respond to the needs and demands that they have, I understand that is the first responsibility that an MP should have, is being able to respond effectively. Even if you don't have the answer, being able to just say, hey, I got what you sent me. I know that you phoned me. I know that you sent me an email. I'm going to get back to you. And even if your answer is not the answer they're looking for, at least you were able to respond. You did your duty as a parliamentarian, as somebody who is able to serve your constituents. This is the bare minimum you can do. When I'm seeing that my Liberal adversary is not fulfilling to the extent that he swore that he would to serve his constituents properly, I'm worried. So I've made the promise to people. I've made the promise that I will be there for you come October 21st as your Conservative MP in this riding. I'm there to serve everybody. I don't care who you voted for, be it Conservatives, Liberals, NDP. Even if you voted for the Rhino Party, I will be there for you. So.
All right, man, let's close it up. Some closing statements. Tell me any messages you want to get out to the people voting on the 21st.
Go vote. Whoever you're voting for, the most important thing is that you participate in our democracy. And it is the most important decision that you will be making, because I truly believe that this is the most important election in Canadian history. In our 150 years plus as a confederation, I think that this will be the most consequential. People know where the parties stand. I think that the Conservative Party and Andrew Scheer as our next Prime Minister is the best choice for Canadians. But at the end of the day, the only person who is right is the voters.
Thanks a lot, bro. I appreciate it.
Hey, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Dude, we're gonna do this again.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Until next time.